Thank you to MPB for sponsoring today's video. MPB is the world's largest platform to buy, sell, and trade used photography and videography kits. If you're a photographer, you likely have gear that you need to sell. Maybe it's to upgrade to a new model or make some extra cash. MPB makes the process of selling or trading your kit hassle-free. With MPB, you simply provide information about your gear's condition, and they provide you with an online quote, oftentimes in an instant. It's a very streamlined approach that takes all the stress out of selling your gear online while quickly getting rid of your no longer needed gear and putting money straight back to your wallet. And if you're also in the market to purchase used gear, MPB has you covered as well, with a wide selection of different camera brands. They're an excellent resource for any photographer to use, so definitely consider checking them out. I used to hate a particular habit of mine while taking photos on the street. I'd be doing street photography and I'd see something I thought looked nice, and I'd take a photo of it. But then I'd immediately look to see if that photo I just took actually looked cool as a photo. For quite a long time, I thought this was a bad habit I was developing, that somehow looking at the photo I just took to see if it looked nice was some amateur, inexperienced photographer habit of mine. Now that couldn't be further from the truth, but I think this idea that I had stemmed from something bigger, something that I think a lot of photographers in this day and age feel and experience all of the time. In today's digital world, it is so incredibly easy to see the work of other photographers. Most of you watching this video right now likely have an Instagram account. It's practically become part of our daily lives at this point. You scroll through your feed of photography, following hundreds of talented people, and you see their work that they're making every day. We're constantly consuming all of this visual inspiration, and you could argue that this is one of the great benefits of being a photographer in this day and age, that there's no shortage of visual inspiration for us to consume. However, with all of this easy to access inspiration that we're exposed to, we're opening ourselves up to compare, specifically comparing our own work to the work that we see online every day. It's natural for us as social humans to make those comparisons and to see how we stack up against the rest of the pack. But when you factor in points of measurement, things like likes, comments, followers, you start to compare things that are less about the actual photo and equate those numbers as a measuring stick for how good your photography is. You might have heard of this quote before: "Comparison is the thief of joy." Those were words by Theodore Roosevelt. They're some of the truest words I've ever heard, especially being a photographer who posts their work online all of the time. You could say it's a negative product of social media, that we take this superficial measuring stick we've created in our minds and put it up against our own work. But it's a natural thing that we do because, we're social beings and we need to make these types of comparisons all of the time in order to better make sense of the world around us. We do it in all aspects of life, but if you're a photographer in 2021, there's no question this kind of comparison is going to come up when you're constantly scrolling through Instagram or browsing YouTube. A comparison a lot of you guys make about me is that I sound like Tobey Maguire.
Pizza time.
Alright, that's a funny, lighthearted example, but it kind of proves my point that we're always trying to make these comparisons. I've always struggled with this feeling of inadequacy pretty much all of my digital creator life, and I still kind of do so today. It's definitely not something I've figured out by any means. Before, it mostly occurred on Instagram, but now that I have this YouTube channel, I've had it spill into this whole other platform. I'd see what other creators in the photography or street photography space were doing, people who had been on YouTube for far longer than I have, and I'd make these unrealistic comparisons based on views and the amount of comments they were getting, and I'd put that up against my own videos. And these were people with much bigger audiences than I had at the time. This is actually a common thing that we do when we compare to what we view as the best. And that just makes the comparison that much more inaccurate for us to use, but much more likely for us to feel upset about. But most important of all, it makes us focus on what other people are doing and takes away from our own work. And that's not the best thing you want when you're a creator. There's a segment of a TED Talk I want to share in this video. It's by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He's an actor. Actually, some of you even say that I look like him. There's another comparison. Anyway, he did a TED Talk in 2019 about the topic of craving attention on social media and how that makes us less creative.
And I search other actors and I see that their number is higher than mine, and it makes me feel terrible about myself. Because the follower count makes everybody feel terrible about themselves. That feeling of inadequacy is what drives you to post, so you can get more attention. And that attention that you get is what these companies sell. That's how they make their money. There is no amount of attention you can get where you feel like you've arrived and you're like, I'm good now. And of course, there are a lot of actors, who are a lot more famous than I am, have more followers than I do, but I bet you they would tell you the same thing. If your creativity is driven by a desire to get attention, you're never gonna be creatively fulfilled.
It's true, you'll never be satisfied if you continue to use these superficial numbers to compare your work to others. There will always seem like there's someone out there who has more than you. It's this constant cycle of a scarcity mindset social media has created in a lot of us, and it's incredibly hard to break out of. I had this particular misconception regarding street photography and how I was approaching it. I had this idea that all of my photos needed, in order for it to be good, it needed to have some profound moment in them, filled with a captivating story, multiple layers, and all of this action happening. Obviously, these are qualities I think make for a great photo, but they're not necessarily things that are required to, have great street photography. However, this is what I thought at the time I needed to have photos like this in order to be considered any good. And this comparison I had in my mind, it was taking away from my enjoyment of street photography. And a lot of this comparing that I had in terms of my style and approach to street photography, it was coming from this constant bombardment of what I was seeing online. And it came from comparing my own work in a way that wasn't exactly true to how I really wanted to approach this. The point here is I think it's important for any creative individual to remember that their art is unique to them, their own experiences, how you see the world. It's unique to you. Only you have your eyes. And yes, of course, those eyes are influenced from all the inspiration we take, but that inspiration can only take us so far. We can't let that inspiration turn into some type of set rule that we create for ourselves. There's this quote I want to share in this video that I actually saw on Twitter. To create something of beauty is reason enough. It was actually retweeted by Ulysses Aoki, another photographer on YouTube some of you might already know, and it stuck with me because it's such an important reminder I personally needed, and I think a lot of you might need as well. Being a photographer, a creator, artist, however you want to describe yourself, social media and all of these superficial numbers that we're so exposed to, all the work that we see on a daily basis from other people, it can be really easy to forget why we make art, why we make photos to begin with. That we should really just continue to make photos because we find it to be beautiful, that it makes us happy, that we enjoy the process of doing this, that there aren't any set rules about this thing called photography, and that you can make it whatever you want it to be.